In the early years of the Second World War, the United States faced a logistical challenge that was not centered on combat forces alone. The movement of supplies, equipment, fuel, and food across oceans had become a central concern. Beginning in 1939, German submarine operations in the Atlantic caused heavy losses among Allied merchant vessels. These losses threatened Britain's ability to sustain both civilian life and military operations. Even before formally entering the war in December 1941, the United States recognized that merchant shipping capacity would determine its ability to support allies and conduct overseas military campaigns. In response, the U.S. Maritime Commission accelerated plans to construct standardized cargo vessels in large numbers. These ships came to be known as Liberty ships. Liberty ships were designed for rapid construction rather than long service life. Their purpose was to replace vessels lost to enemy action and to expand cargo capacity as quickly as possible. The design emphasized simplicity, standardized components, and methods that could be adapted to mass production. One of the most important centers of Liberty ship construction was located on the west coast of the United States, the Kaiser Shipyards in Richmond, California. These shipyards were operated by industrialist Henry J. Kaiser, who had prior experience managing large-scale construction projects, but limited experience in shipbuilding. And between 1941 and 1945, the Richmond shipyards became a major site of emergency industrial mobilization. Thousands of workers were recruited, including large numbers of women who entered industrial roles previously dominated by men. Government agencies, private contractors, and labor organizations worked together under wartime authority to sustain continuous production. This documentary examines Liberty ship production at the Kaiser Shipyards in Richmond during the Second World War. It focuses on the organization of shipbuilding, the composition of the workforce, documented individual experiences, and the role of Liberty ships in transporting wartime supplies. The narration is based on U.S. Maritime Commission records, Kaiser Shipyard documentation, and worker testimonies preserved in public archives. Interpretations by historians are clearly identified. The objective is to explain how emergency shipbuilding was carried out, rather than to dramatize the events or assess their broader moral implications. The Liberty ship program originated from British and American efforts to address critical shipping shortages during the early years of the war. In 1940, British officials shared plans for a simple cargo vessel with American counterparts. The United States Maritime Commission adopted and modified the design, creating what became known as the EC2 SE-1 Liberty ship. Documented specifications show that Liberty ships were approximately 441 feet long, with a cargo capacity of about 10,000 tons. They were powered by triple expansion steam engines, a proven technology that could be produced without competing for turbine manufacturing capacity needed for warships. The emphasis of the design was not innovation, but speed and standardization. The Maritime Commission approved a construction approach that relied on prefabricated sections, simplified systems, and extensive use of welding rather than traditional riveting. Welding reduced labor time and allowed for faster assembly. Federal planning documents indicate that the government intended to disperse shipbuilding across multiple shipyards to reduce bottlenecks and vulnerability. Henry J. Kaiser was awarded contracts to operate several shipyards, including for facilities in Richmond, California. Designated Yard No. 1 through Yard No. Kaiser's management approach emphasized tight scheduling, subdivision of labor, and close coordination with suppliers. Although Kaiser lacked prior shipbuilding experience, Government officials viewed his organizational skills as transferable. Early Liberty ship production encountered difficulties. Maritime Commission inspection reports from 1941 and 1942 note problems with weld quality, material shortages, and worker inexperience. These issues led to delays and required adjustments in training and inspection procedures. Historians generally interpret these early problems as typical of emergency mobilization, rather than evidence of flawed planning. The rapid expansion of shipbuilding capacity required the recruitment and training of workers on a scale not previously attempted in American shipyards. By late 1942, production stabilized. Standardization across shipyards improved, suppliers increased output, and inspection protocols became more consistent. Liberty ship construction became increasingly predictable in both cost and time. The design of the Liberty ship and the planning framework that supported it reflected a wartime emphasis on quantity and reliability rather than longevity or performance. This approach shaped every aspect of production at Richmond. The Richmond shipyards were located along the eastern shore of San Francisco Bay, an area selected for its access to deep water rail connections and available land. Construction of the first yard began in 1941, with additional yards added as production expanded. Each yard consisted of multiple slipways, fabrication shops, warehouses, and administrative offices. The layout was designed to allow prefabricated sections to be assembled near the slipways, reducing the distance components needed to be moved. Kaiser Shipyard records show that production methods were heavily standardized. Hull sections were fabricated separately and then brought together for final assembly. This allowed multiple ships to be under construction simultaneously at different stages. Government oversight was continuous. Representatives of the U.S. Maritime Commission were stationed at the yards to monitor compliance with specifications, labor practices, and delivery schedules. Reports indicate that coordination between Kaiser management and federal inspectors improved over time. The shipyards operated on a continuous schedule with multiple shifts covering 24-hour periods. Lighting systems were installed to support night work, and transportation arrangements were made to bring workers to and from the yards. Richmond's population increased rapidly as workers relocated to the area. Federal housing projects were constructed nearby to accommodate the workforce. These developments are documented in War Housing Administration records. Historians note that the Richmond shipyards functioned as temporary industrial communities. Facilities included medical clinics, cafeterias, and training centers. These services were intended to maintain productivity and reduce absenteeism, rather than to provide long-term social infrastructure. Production records show a steady increase in output through 1942 and 1943. As experience accumulated, the average construction time for Liberty ships decreased significantly. The physical scale of the Richmond shipyards reflected the urgency of wartime production. They were designed for speed and capacity rather than permanence. After the war, most facilities were dismantled or repurposed, reflecting their temporary role. The rapid expansion of shipbuilding required the recruitment of tens of thousands of workers. Kaiser Shipyard employment records indicate that many workers had no prior industrial experience. Recruitment campaigns targeted service workers, agricultural laborers, and individuals previously excluded from skilled trades. Women constituted a significant portion of the workforce. Government labor statistics and shipyard records confirm that women were employed in welding, fitting, electrical work, and inspection. This participation was encouraged through federal labor policies and public information campaigns. One documented example is Eastine Cowner, who worked as a welder at the Richmond shipyards. Prior to her employment, Cowner had been a waitress. Her recruitment and training are documented in wartime records and post-war interviews preserved in public archives. Training programs were conducted on site. New workers received instruction in specific tasks rather than comprehensive shipbuilding education. This division of labor allowed workers to become productive quickly. Worker testimonies collected by government agencies indicate that training periods ranged from several days to a few weeks, depending on the task. Welding training was particularly emphasized, as welding was central to Liberty ship construction. Official safety reports note that industrial accidents occurred, particularly during early production phases. In response, safety protocols were revised and additional supervision was implemented. If emotions are mentioned in worker testimonies, they are typically described in relation to adjustment challenges, fatigue, or satisfaction with steady employment. These descriptions appear in documented interviews rather than inferred accounts. Labor relations at the shipyards involved multiple unions and were overseen by federal labor boards. Disputes occurred but were generally resolved through mediation, as work stoppages were discouraged during wartime. Historians interpret the workforce composition at Richmond as a product of necessity rather than a deliberate social experiment. The integration of women into shipbuilding was driven by labor shortages and production demands. One of the most frequently cited features of Liberty ship production was the reduction in construction time. Early Liberty ships required several months to complete. By 1943, construction times had decreased significantly. Kaiser Shipyard records document multiple instances in which Liberty ships were completed in less than 30 days from keel laying to launch. In a small number of cases, assembly times were measured in weeks or days, though these represented exceptional circumstances rather than routine production. These achievements were made possible through prefabrication, standardized workflows, and continuous labor shifts. Government inspection reports confirm that speed did not eliminate inspection requirements, though acceptance procedures were streamlined. It is important to note that launching a ship did not mean it was immediately operational. Outfitting and sea trials followed construction. Production records distinguish between hull completion and delivery readiness. Historians caution against interpreting record construction times as representative of all shipbuilding activity. Average completion times remained longer, but still significantly shorter than pre-war standards. The emphasis on speed led to technical issues. Post-launch inspections identified structural problems in some vessels, particularly related to welding. These issues were documented and addressed through design modifications and revised welding procedures. Despite these challenges, the overall output of Liberty ships increased steadily. Richmond became one of the most productive shipbuilding centers in the United States. The ability to produce cargo vessels rapidly allowed the Maritime Commission to maintain shipping capacity, despite ongoing losses. This contribution was measured in numbers of hulls completed, rather than individual ship performance. Liberty ships constructed at Richmond entered service primarily as cargo carriers. Their role was to transport supplies, such as vehicles, ammunition, fuel, food, and raw materials across the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Operational records show that Liberty ships were assigned to convoys and operated under naval protection when possible. Loss rates varied by theater and period, with the highest losses occurring during periods of intense submarine activity. The ships were crewed by civilian merchant mariners, with naval armed guards assigned to defensive weaponry. Crew experiences are documented in logs, official reports, and post-war testimonies. These accounts appear in personal statements rather than official summaries. The impact of Liberty ships on the war effort is documented in logistical records showing increased cargo throughput. However, historians differ in assessing the extent to which shipping alone determines strategic outcomes. In accordance with your instructions, this documentary does not assume or assert decisive global impact. It presents documented evidence that Liberty ships contributed to sustaining supply lines across oceans. Many Liberty ships had relatively short service lives. Some were lost to enemy action, others were retired or scrapped after the war. Their design life was estimated at 5 years, a fact recorded in Maritime Commission planning documents. As the war approached its conclusion in 1945, demand for new cargo vessels declined. The U.S. Maritime Commission reduced contracts, and Liberty ship production slowed. The Richmond shipyard ceased Liberty ship construction shortly after Germany's surrender and Japan's subsequent capitulation. Workforce reductions followed, and many workers returned to civilian occupations. Government records indicate that wartime housing and services were gradually dismantled or repurposed. The shipyards themselves were decommissioned, with most facilities dismantled in the post-war years. Historians generally interpret the closure of the Richmond shipyards as consistent with the temporary nature of emergency wartime industry. The facilities had been built for a specific purpose, under exceptional conditions. The Liberty ship program left behind extensive documentation, including production records, technical reports, and worker testimonies. These materials form the basis for historical analysis. Liberty ship production at the Kaiser Shipyards in Richmond between 1941 and 1945 presents a case study in emergency industrial mobilization. Faced with severe shipping losses and expanding logistical demands, the United States implemented a standardized approach to cargo vessel construction. The program relied on simplified ship design, federal coordination, and a workforce recruited from non-traditional backgrounds. Documented examples, such as Eastine Cowners, transition from service work to welding, illustrate how labor shortages shaped workforce composition. Production records confirm that construction times were reduced significantly compared to pre-war shipbuilding. While not all ships were completed in record time, the overall increase in output is well documented. Liberty ships fulfilled a functional role in transporting supplies. Their operational history reflects both their limitations and their utility within the constraints of wartime necessity. Historians differ in their interpretation of the broader strategic significance of Liberty ships. What is supported by archival evidence is that they expanded cargo capacity during a period of sustained maritime losses. The Richmond shipyards existed for a limited period, reflecting the temporary demands of total war. Their legacy lies in documented production methods, labor organization, and administrative coordination rather than enduring industrial infrastructure. This documentary has focused on recorded facts and documented testimony, presents Liberty ship production not as a symbol, but as an industrial response to a specific logistical problem during the Second World War.